Evening. My name is Charlene Kometz. I am the Director of Secondary School Advising at Carroll. Welcome to our parent alumni panel, and thank you to everyone who is joined, still joining. And I want to thank my colleagues who are here, Cece McNally and Francie Fenton. Give a little wave there. We are really excited about this event tonight. And joining us this evening are 6 wonderful parents who have not only offered their time this evening, but are sharing their wisdom, journey, and story on finding the right fit school for their child. It was not long ago that they were in your shoes, so to speak. So actually what I would love to do and this, by the way, this is going to be a really informal, fun, great, informative evening. But what I would love is to have each of the panelists actually introduce themselves. They can let you know who their student is and where their student is in school today, and maybe how long they were at Carroll. We are in a gallery view, and I think in this instance, maybe I'll have us kind of go around, maybe starting with Sarah, if you wouldn't mind.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sarah. I have a daughter, Emily, who's now in 9th grade at Lexington High School. She was at Carroll for 7th and 8th grade.
Thank you, Sarah. Shauna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jana Chaudhry. My son Rohan is in 9th grade at Minuteman in Lexington, and he was at Carroll from 2nd grade until 8th grade.
Robin.
Hi, I am Robin Jones. My daughter is Eden, and she is a 10th grader at Lawrence Academy. And she did 7th, 8th, and 9th grade at Carroll. Too short, not enough time.
Thank you. Kristen.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Kristen Fitzgerald. My daughter, Julia, is a senior at St. Joseph's Prep. It's hard to believe we're now on the transition to college side of things, but we're so grateful to Carroll because it transformed Julia's life. She attended Carroll from 5th to 8th grade.
Thank you, Kristen. Colleen.
I am Colleen Bagley. My son Jack is in the 10th grade at the Winchington School, and he attended the Carroll School for 8th and 9th grade at the upper school in Wayland.
Wonderful. And Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie St. Louis, and my son Miles attended Carroll from 4th grade through 8th grade, and he is now a 2nd-year sophomore at Proctor Academy where he boards.
Wow, thank you all. What a wonderful group. And I can't believe that we have the range, freshman to senior in high school. This is incredible. So I think I want to, I do want to begin this evening by sharing that really this is about the process of how these wonderful parents were able to navigate their transition journey for their child with regard to the school that they ultimately chose. And again, it's an informal conversation this evening. So I'm going to start with a question that comes up often, which is if you could share some wisdom about open houses, interviews, and applications, and how did you kind of get that first list or going for yourself? And the way we're going to do it this evening is anyone who would like to unmute or kind of raise their hand, however you want to do it, please, we would love any of the panelists to offer their insight on this. Go ahead, Robin.
Thanks. So it was an interesting time because it was COVID. So we could not look at schools physically. We could only do everything online. But I have to say, Charlene, you were our advisor, Eden's advisor, and you, the beauty about the Carroll School, I think, is you and your other colleagues who are doing advising really know who our kids are and what they would where they would thrive. So you recommended a bunch of schools to us to take a look at, and we spent a lot of time online. We did drive to the schools just to do drive-bys because we couldn't literally go in. So we just did campus drives, and that was actually helpful. And, just to sort of see the environment. There were no kids to even see walking around at that point. So that was a little bit challenging in that regard. But we ended up reaching out to a bunch of parents that Carroll recommended that we could talk to, of kids who were attending these schools that we were interested in. So that was really helpful. The interviews, which were on Zoom, were in some regards really helpful, because at that point my daughter was used to Zoom. And so she was actually comfortable being on a Zoom interview. They were really casual and low key, and all the schools made it very clear they just wanted this to be a conversation, that they didn't want the students to feel stressed or anxious about it. And I have to say that Eden walked away from all of her interviews saying, God, they were so nice. That was really fun. Or, that was great. And so that kudos to all the schools that we talked to actually make her feel so comfortable throughout the process. And as it related to the application, Charlene, again, I give you so much credit. You really checked in with Eden all the time. You were super helpful to us in guiding us through that process. I mean, we've been through the college stuff multiple times in our house, but this was a little bit different because this was like, okay, life after Carroll, which we weren't ready to give up. We just, we wanted Carroll to go on through high school. We tried our best to make that happen. It just wasn't going to happen. So, so you really did help us navigate the process. And I have to say, we're super grateful and very fortunate. And the only thing I will say is it all works out in the end. It just like when you have kids, if some of you have kids who've been to college or are going to college, it all works out in the end. I will also say that our daughter decided she actually was because she did Carroll 9, she was applying to 10th grade for the schools that she applied to. And on her own, she decided after she got into her schools and made her decision, and she got into her schools for 10th grade, she thought, you know what? I think I want to do 9th grade all over again. I kind of want 4 full years. And we were so happy that she decided to take an extra year. We did mention it during the application process, and that was not a conversation to be had at that point. So she felt like she came up with that on her own, which was really great. And she did, ultimately, it was her decision. So, it was a really thoughtful, methodical process, I would say.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate all that. That input is really nice to hear, and hear how she's already making those really independent decisions, now that she's in even more independent decisions on her own. Would anyone else like to offer how they're kind of some wisdom on their kind of journey in terms of the schools you kind of were thinking about, or some of you were in that space where you had to visit remotely. Some of you were able to be in person, and that might look a little different. Carrie, did you have something to offer?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think ours was a little bit different because we did it in person. And so I think I just have a couple small pieces of advice to add on to what Robin said. So we saw schools a little bit early. Like we kind of thought, we knew Carroll was ending in 8th grade, and we just thought applying in 8th grade might be a lot. So we said maybe in 7th grade, when we had time and there were different events throughout the year, we tried to go and visit some schools that we knew Carroll had sent alumni to, just to get kind of a feel a little bit early, so that we weren't having to do that and do all of the applications. And so we did do some in-person open houses and interviews. And I think, the one thing I will agree there, it's very friendly, very encouraging environments at all these schools, but we did try to prepare a little bit just so that Miles would be comfortable, because, I think as much as wasn't really trying to make him feel like he was doing well there, but more just that he would get out of it what we needed him to get out of it, which was ask questions, be prepared, what is their thought on after school programs, how are their schedules like. So we tried to get a couple questions generated so he wouldn't freeze like deer in headlights, when we went to the open houses, because it's a little, some of these are very crowded, and you have to kind of figure out a little bit of a way to kind of introduce yourself and start some conversations. And I think that when they're more comfortable with that, more prepared, it was a little bit easier. I will also say that for interviews, we took Carroll up on the opportunity to do a mock interview ahead of some of his interviews for schools. And I thought that was an excellent idea. Really helped him know what to expect. And we kind of had some like good notes from that we kind of just like left on a little sheet of paper that he'd have with him when he was interviewing. I think a lot of his interviews were Zoom for whatever reason. I can't really remember, but he did have some in-person interviews too. So I think it was a mixture now that I'm thinking about it. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the schools, I think the only thing I'll say for me, like my son ended up at a boarding school. He didn't really look at a lot of boarding schools. He kind of looked at more day schools, and then he had one specific boarding school he was interested. We kind of have a connection to that school. We have spent a lot of time in that area. So I don't have a great description of, if you were looking at boarding schools, but that was kind of the way that we kind of honed in on that one school for boarding we were comfortable with, and then looked at a lot of day schools. But again, the guidance from Carroll was really what kind of directed us that pathway. So I'll just leave it at that.
Great, thank you so much. Would anyone else like to add on to some of the words of wisdom about the interviewing, the applications, about kind of getting those first steps of the process, how that went for you? Jana.
And I apologize if you can hear drumming. I don't know if you can hear drumming. Sorry, there's a drum lesson.
That's like a bonus. We
Okay.
like that.
I just want to give kudos to Cece, because she, just from the beginning, it was, we kind of relied on her insights and guidance about what would work or what would be a good fit for Rohan. And then going from that list, we narrowed it down. And we were thinking of public, Minuteman, which is public vocational. We were also looking at private. And I mean, a lot of it in the plan, Rohan had said he wanted to be at home. So, we were kind of limiting it geographically, right, to things that were logistically feasible for us. And then we just kind of went to open houses, and they were, like everyone had said, friendly and formal. And we were in person. This was just last year. And so it's the experience is that oftentimes there's so many other Carroll kids at these. So it's kind of like, oh, you see your friends, and we'd get there, and then Rohan would go off with whoever he met, and then I'd hang out with parents, and so it was kind of there's a nice Carroll community too, to just, that is helpful. One of the things that we really went by was just Rohan's assessment of any given place. And so that was something that struck me. I think one of the admissions places was like, this is their next 4 years, and what feels right for them is going to make a difference in terms of your decision making. So we kind of went with how he felt from the different places, and that helped us narrow it down. So I feel like that was just, and he is a kiddo that makes his decisions kind of quickly. So we didn't have to look at too many places.
So what I'm hearing is you listened to how he was feeling and what, which is really important. Did anyone else want to add into this topic, or I can move on? I can move on. And there was a question about Eden, Robin's daughter. She was a day student or boarder. And I think Robin noted she was a day student and now she's a boarder. So she has transitioned after being there into wanting to be there a lot, but close enough to home that I'm guessing Robin gets up there to see her a bit. So yeah, somebody was interested in that question. So another question that had come in was just any advice on helping your child manage or work through the worry or stress of leaving Carroll? Actually, and some of you talked about that a little bit, how, you wanted to stay at Would be great if Carol continued, or and some kids say, oh, I'm ready to go no matter what, like I'm ready for that next step. And then there is a lot of this that happens through the year. So if anyone has any tips that we could give some of the families that are listening on what you felt was helpful in terms of like you're managing schoolwork, you're managing applications, and the thought of, you know, the end of this particular journey at Carroll. If anyone would like to add onto that, that would be great. Yes, Colleen.
I think for all of us, it's difficult. We all sat where everybody that's watching sat at one point, and I think to know there's an end to Carroll is a hard bit for us to swallow as parents. But my son Jack, at his 9th grade year, you know, I never thought I would be saying it. He was ready when the time had ended at Carroll. At this point, you know, when we were going through the interviewing processes and, you know, looking at secondary schools, it was stressful. I'm not going to say it wasn't, and I'm sure everybody felt the same way, but you have to trust your child and know that the folks at Carroll know them better than anybody when it comes to them academically. So trust that they will set you in the right path. And when they say, by this time, your child will know, they're telling you the truth. So take it from me. But for Jack, he was definitely ready to spread his wings, and he knew, you know, I can move on from Carroll, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to do great things no matter where I go. And luckily we found, you know, another school that he's thrived at. So we're very happy for him.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Would anyone else like to add to that in terms of just the support? Carrie?
Yeah, I would just kind of follow on with that. Miles had been there since 4th grade. So I think although he, you know, thoroughly enjoyed every minute at Carroll, I think he was also kind of ready to spread his wings. I think what the positive of the whole school process and decision-making process was it really reinforced how prepared he felt for the next step with Carroll. Like, you know, his confidence in his learning, even though like he has struggles, you know, but all the confidence that he built up at Carroll really came through a lot in his interviews. And then in a lot of feedback we got from the schools when he was looking at different schools, and he looked at a whole myriad, you know, I should also mention he looked at Minuteman, he looked at a number of day schools and then the one boarding school. So we had a number of different touch points, actually some parochial schools as well. So I think that was really like reinforcing the Miles, that he got that feedback and he could see himself kind of taking that next leap. And so, you know, that I think really was a really positive thing, that maybe if your child is a little bit nervous or unsure, you know, going through this process and just seeing how prepared they'll be and how what good advocates they are for themselves, and they know how they are as learners, seeing them be able to kind of see that in a different context, I think is very reassuring, you know, as they kind of contemplate that large jump, is what I would say.
Great, thank you. It kind of leads me into just keeping them, how you might, because this also comes up as a question, is how to either keep your child engaged in this process, whether you are looking at public, private, parochial, like it's a process, and you're in 8th grade or 9th grade, and you want to have this great year, and you have an uptick in homework and schoolwork. So there's like a lot going on, and some kids love it. And it's like, they're excited to go to all, you know, interviews or explore options or do a shadow day at their public school or do something else. But then others, they're uncertain. So I don't know how you all were able to manage, or some tips on having your child kind of be engaged in the process, or maybe if they weren't, how you managed it. Sure, Robin, and then Kristen, and then we'll go around.
Yeah, that's a great point. So because we have 2 older kids who've gone through the college process, we sort of pretended it was similar to that, only we didn't, you know, we were hoping it wasn't going to be as stressful. It was stressful for Eden. But so because it was stressful for her, because she didn't feel like she had enough time at Carroll, but she was ready to leave when Carroll ended for ninth grade. She was like, okay, I've got this. But what we made a decision was I didn't want her to feel like every time she walked in the door from school, I was going to be like, so you ready to start working on your essay? So we had this deal that we would talk about the school process one night a week at the same time. So I think we picked like Wednesdays at 8, and that was the night that we had to sit down for an hour plus just to go through and to help her go through things. I knew she was going through things with Charlene at school, so it was really a time to get her to sort of tell us where she was in the process, and where there's obviously the parent side of things. If I recall, there's some things that the parents have to do. If I remember, I can't even remember at this point. But it was just our touch point, and that was really helpful. And as much as I would check in with Charlene, of course, regularly. You would help me understand where things were when I was unclear from Eden, but that made it all the difference, just to know that, okay, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. It's only Sunday. We're not going to talk about it. So that was really helpful. That's how we dealt with it. And then I will say that transition, the couple of weeks before going to the new school, was also sort of a stressful time. And she didn't want to talk about it then, because all of a sudden summer was ending. She really wasn't going back to Carroll, and she was going to this new place. So we sort of had to manage through that as well. But it all worked out beautifully, thanks to Carroll.
Thank you, Robin. That is a great tip on the 1 day a week, or especially if that's something where they're a little resistant. That's a great tip. Kristen.
Thanks. Similar to Robin, Julia needs more check-ins spaced out. So we did a Tuesday, Thursday, where we would just set aside a time after school where we would just check in on where she was in the thought process for all of the applications and schools she wanted to look at. She also gets quite a bit of anxiety and really is difficult time making big decisions like that. So we started early. We really started talking about it in 7th grade, just to kind of talk about what schools might be a good fit and space out where we were going to go. But we empowered her of the list Carroll gave us, which ones she wanted to start with, which ones she wanted to look at. We made the decision to pull her out of school against her wishes in 5th grade when she came to Carroll. So we felt like this time we were going to take all that Carroll had to offer in terms of the advice and the fit of schools that would be good for Julia, but then let her feel like she was driving the process. And that really kept her engaged, and where she felt empowered that she was making the decision according to her own feelings. So I found that to be very helpful.
Wow, that is terrific. Thank you for sharing, Kristen. And Sarah, I know you wanted to add how that worked out for you.
Yeah, no, sure. Like Kristen, we definitely empowered our daughter and had her part of this process the entire time. We were looking at schools that were geographically in our location. Lexington High School just happens to be right down the street from our house. I mean, it's truly a stone's throw away, and Minuteman is right up the road. So we're right in between these two schools. But one of the things that we did is we said to Emily, like, what's most important to you in just not so much school, but in your life, and she kind of came up with a list, and it was what was around us in this geographical area. So like her friends, she kept a lot of friends from home. So she wanted to be close to her friends. She's a dancer. The dance school is right down the road. So she wanted to be like in this area. And that was us empowering her, like, what's most important to you? And then let's look at these different schools and the different programs that they have and go in that direction. So for the longest time, we toured Minuteman. She had been on the campus of our public school many a times, just kind of riding her bike and whatever when she was younger. So she felt comfortable with that. And, I think there were times where she was flip-flopping between the two schools, for sure. And then I think she really had to focus in as to like, what could she do if she went to the public schools? Well, she could easily walk. She could then from the public school go to the library. She could really unite with her friends and have that piece of independence just by going to the public school. And I think that's ultimately why she chose the public school, was that independence that she could have. And we felt, comfortable with that decision because we felt that she was empowering. She was thinking of everything that was important to her. And she made a really good decision. Although, to be quite honest with you, both decisions were great. Like, she wasn't going to make a wrong decision.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Actually, a question had come in prior about for families that entertained and ultimately decided on public school option or Minuteman, which falls in the public school umbrella. In terms of the IEP or 504 process, for those families that also like not only entertain that, but are also weighing all options. Can you share, Jana and Sarah, a little bit about how that worked for you at both of your schools and ultimately what did your child end up with in terms of that? Was it a 504 or IEP, and how did you navigate that process? Share a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, my daughter's on an IEP. And so we continued meeting with the school annually, to update the IEP. And had she gone to Minuteman, we would have sat with the folks at Minuteman and they would have created a Minuteman style IEP, if you will. Just to include their services, but the services were going to be the same. Just, called a different, the class name was going to be something different or whatnot. So, so for us, it was the IEP route.
Great. Thank you.
And I'll just add that, to be quite honest with you, our daughter was, supported more than she needed to be. So she got to the public high school and we actually had to amend the IEP, lessen the amounts of supports that she had in school, because she didn't need them anymore, which was really great. And that of course made her so happy too. So
great. Thank you so much. That is great to know that she actually got a lot of support, because I think that is often a concern for families navigating that. So I think I'm going to ask a question of both of you. Jana, you want to give a little bit on your, how that worked out for you in terms of that IEP process?
Sure. And it's similar to Emily. Rohan was on an IEP and every year we would update it. And so then kind of the transition, and I don't know if Arlington, I don't know what the communication was, but it was just this Minuteman reached out. We created an IEP for him based on the information from Arlington. It was very smooth. And then also Carroll teachers had inputs into the IEP. And so that was so helpful because I feel like Carroll school teachers just know the kids better than we do in terms of their learning and, for the specifics. And so that was very helpful. And so he's on an IEP. He does get, he gets additional support. He has academic support, which is kind of like NCLE. I mean, I think that, it's to help with more executive functioning kind of things. And it's been really good. And I have his IEP meeting on Friday, so I wish I could give you a proper update, but so far I feel like he's getting the support he needs because
that's great.
He's doing well. Yeah.
That is great. I know there are families that are entertaining public school and or a technical vocational school who maybe haven't kept up their IEP or have moved to a different town. So it is a little bit, you both are in a space where you were able to continue that process. I guess for the family that's in a little different space, what I'll offer is that you can always start that. And that what you want to know is that you want to find that out, that your child is eligible for those services. So you know kind of what you're heading into. And another piece that I'll offer that Jana was great about Rohan, that she's having her meeting for Rohan coming up, is that Minuteman in particular, I know once a student is accepted, you choose to go there, they will have a meeting at the end of the year before they leave Carroll to make sure they understand that that IEP is truly what the student needs and is there something else they need. So there's a lot of communication, and I think it does fall on the parents a lot more on the public school end, but these are wonderful resources to show how it can work out really well. And so I know we have so many great questions coming in, so I'm going to bop around a little bit. I'm going to lead in afterwards. I'm just going to give a precursor. We are going to talk about support. So, but before we go that route, there was a parent who asked about the commuting, and if any of you have kind of a longer commute, long, maybe 45 minutes or more, and if that impacts the family and the student, and if there's any, I would say, like regrets or questions around like that drive, and anyone feel free to answer that. Robin?
So yeah, we had that commute. So we live in Wayland and Eden goes to school out in Groton, and Eden was not ready to board, nor were we ready to give her up for that. So, but this was clearly the school she wanted to go to, the right school for her. We were really excited about her attending Lawrence. So we just decided, okay, we're doing this and we're going to commute. And there typically when the schools are further away, there's more families are in your sort of 20, 10-mile radius of where you live. Maybe there was one other family in our town who was going to Lawrence when Eden did, but we didn't know who that was. But there were people in Concord and Lincoln and I believe Sudbury and even Natick. So there's a bus that you do have to put in money for if you choose to do that. So we would drive. I'd say most days we drove at least to the school, which was about 45 minutes on a good day, decent day. That was what it was. Or she would take the bus, and the bus was still a 25 minute morning drive for us. I loved it. And my husband loved it. We took turns. I usually did mornings, he did evenings, but we were flexible with each other on that. We were flexible with Eden. That did become her social life, being at school Friday nights. They'd have things going on. We didn't want to make her come back home with the bus at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night on a Friday night. So we said, of course, you can go do this event that the school is hosting and we'll pick you up at whatever time, 10:30. I'd say those nights were kind of hard, but to be honest, I have to say, we loved that car time with her. It was a really special time. It became harder for her in that all of her meals were at school. That was just easier. And her social life was there. So all of a sudden being home was kind of boring. And she would sort of come home after sports at night, eat dinner quickly again, have a snack, get to work, shower, get to work, go to bed, get up and do the same thing. So she came to us a year ago in like January and said, I think I really want to board next year. I'm ready to do this. And we were sort of like, whoa, okay. We tried to say, aren't you going to miss us? And, really we were making it about us because we didn't, but we knew it was the right thing for her. So we would tease her about it. It has been a really good decision for her. We do see her all the time. You play a sport, even if you're not into sports, there's fun things to do on JV, whatever. She happens to be into sports. We see her games every week, and she does come home most every weekend after her game on Saturdays. So you definitely can work it out. There are definitely people that you can carpool with. I know a lot of people who were doing that. And like I said, most schools, when the school is far from where your child lives, has a bus option. So it's just really up to the student. I'd still be driving her every day, both ways, if I had my way.
Thank you, Robin. And now, because I feel like I just know this night's the questions are gonna keep coming, and I'm gonna want to keep hearing everything that has to come out. So I'm just gonna move on to support, which I know a lot of people are really interested. Could I have each of you talk about the learning support that your child is receiving at their school and how that's going and what you think? And what we'll do is I think we're going to start from the bottom and go up. How about Carrie, you start?
Yep. At Proctor, Miles uses their learning skills. He is seen by, he has a learning skills advisor. He sees her 3 times a week, 70 minutes a session, and it's 2 students to 1 learning skills advisor. He's had the same learning skills advisor for both freshman and sophomore year, though the student that he was with changed from freshman year to sophomore year. And it was absolutely one of the strongest reasons why we went with Proctor, was just the amount of the dedicated resource, and it has been a huge help for him. It's really allowed him to take actually more challenging classes than I think he would on his own, and it's been a huge benefit. They have different levels of learning skills, so if you want to gradually shift down, I think he's in the most direct one. You can do that, and all that information is on their website, but I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Colleen, tell me about Jack's learning support at Winchton.
So at the Winchton School, they have the Hatch program, and they have, again, 2 different tiers where you meet with learning strategists. So it's either 3 students to 1 learning strategist or one-on-one. So Jack's in with the 3 to 1, and they meet 3 times a week. And he also has time during the day where he can go in between classes if he has to, and meet with a specific teacher if he is struggling in one of his subjects. And that was a big factor for us at the school. They probably have classroom sizes between 7 to 9 kids. So he feels like he really is getting that individualized attention. However, having his learning strategist that he can see 3 times a week just adds a little bit more if he's having trouble starting a paper or, with a math problem. She's there to guide him and help him as a wonderful resource. And a lot of these schools that we did look at did have, different tiers of learning support. Some of the schools that we looked at, you had to seek the help or stay after school to receive help. Some had learning centers that, Jack would have to go early in the morning to receive help. So we kind of always were driving the bus when we were looking at these schools, but we told him, you know what you need, and you need to navigate for yourself and let us know, from what he's learned at Carroll. And, when he saw what he saw at some of the schools, he just said, way too many kids, not enough attention if I may need it. He wasn't saying that he did, but if he did, he didn't want to be left, out in the cold of how am I going to get this help? So that is a big factor for Carroll parents. So keep that in mind when you are looking at schools. Make sure when you are there, looking at the schools, that you are seeking out whomever is in charge of these different programs. Get their names, get their numbers, see if you can meet with them. And, if it not be that day, get in touch with them after the fact, because that is a big part of our children's lives as they, navigate through high school.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. It sounds like Jack was really quite understanding of what he wanted and needed
Yes,
in a high school, and was able to let you know. Thank you
absolutely.
very much. Kristen, I'd love to hear some of your feedback on this topic.
Thank you. Yeah, so Julia goes to St. Joseph's Prep in Brighton, and they have an academic enrichment center called the AEC. And there is a designated head of the AEC along with reading and math specialists. And she goes there every day during her study hall, and they'll assist her with homework, maybe things that she's having difficulty with. They work through that during her study blocks. Also, every teacher is required to stay after school for an hour every day. Most sports start, well, all sports start at 3:30, and Julia plays sports, so she's at school anyhow. So she goes in every day. She's very good because of Carroll at advocating for herself and knowing what she needs. So she'll go in, even if she's not stuck on something, just to check in with her teachers every day after school, to make sure she's on point and knows what work she needs to do when she gets home. Because it's a parochial school, they don't have the standard technical IEP or 504, but she does have a learning plan. And with that, they don't modify curriculum because it is a rigorous college prep curriculum, but they do they offer all the supports I mentioned, but she also gets extra time on her tests and quizzes. So if she doesn't finish those during her class time, she will go during her study block and finish those, or she can finish them after school in the Learning Commons. And the Learning Commons at SJP is a beautiful space on the 5th floor that overlooks the city of Boston. So she really loves to go up there and just have quiet time and utilize that time to work on what she needs to. She was also eligible for a language waiver given her learning difference, and she chose not to use that because SJP offered Latin, which she wanted to really give a try because she thought that that would really help her with the morphology of words and understand language a little bit more. So she gave it a try, and it's actually been her favorite class of any of the classes that she's taken. And she's now in a dual enrollment Latin class with UMass Boston as a senior. So it's pretty incredible. She works really, really, really hard. But she's doing exceptional. And the thing that SJP offers that other schools, we looked at some of the other schools, not all, they offer different levels of curriculum for each class. So you're not on one track. So she is taking, all sorts of AP classes and honors classes. And they're all different levels. You don't have to be on one track. Each subject can be different. So that was really great. We did look into the public school realm of things. We did look at Minutemen and our local public school, and Minutemen was great about offering her an IEP. And our local public school, we had been renewing it since her elementary school years, but in 8th grade, they chose not to give her a lot of support for high school. So it didn't end up being the right fit for her, but where she landed, she's getting all the support she needs and she's just thriving.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. And I remember last year visiting SJP with my colleagues, and Julia was our tour guide, and she walked by her Latin class and said, "Oh, my favorite class." And I was like, oh my goodness. It was really quite wonderful. So thank you. Robin, we'd love to hear about the academic support offered at in school and how she's accessing and where she's at in that process.
Yeah, so Lawrence actually has the great fortune of having a former Carroll learning coach teaching. I don't
So
know.
she's one of our colleagues in secondary school advising, and now is the head of learning support. Happens to be the head of learning support at Alumni.
Yes, which was a huge plus. And so she is Eden's learning coach. Eden meets with her twice a week formally, but then can meet with her anytime she wants to during the week. Lawrence has been really great. There's I'd say a good number of Carroll kids over the last several years going to Lawrence Academy because it is a place that offers the support to students. They love Carroll students because they advocate for themselves and they work really hard and they love Carroll students. So I would say that and I would say that Eden always says that other kids who are not from Carroll and who perhaps are not, don't need the learning support want it because they think it's what a great way to get that added, extra boost of support. So she uses it. Teachers at Lawrence are really great in saying, we want you to, they'll reach out to her if they feel like she could use some more help, but she does advocate for herself. And they will also, she has a language waiver. She is taking Spanish because she wanted to do that. It has definitely been a challenge. But her Spanish teacher is all over trying to make it work with her, we're going to get through this. You're going to do this. And, we shared with Eden, she cannot take that class. She doesn't need to. And she's absolutely, determined to take the class for the whole year. And plow through. But it's not easy, and she is getting the support that she needs, which has been really incredible. We're super lucky. And so Lawrence really does understand that. It's not a school that offers individual learning plans. She does have a 504. So that's lucky, but she gets the support when she needs it and wherever she needs it.
So what I'm hearing is, in addition to her 2 times a week, she's able to meet with teachers and finds that the teachers are working hard to understand who she is as a learner. So that's something parents can think about at any school that they're looking at, in terms of like, who else is going to be working with my child and how understanding are they going to be about who they are as a learner. Jana, we'd love to hear about Rohan's experience at Minuteman in terms of the support.
So Rohan has academic support, and then he has reading support, and academic support is every day. And he I'm just trying to remember, he doesn't have Spanish right now, but he's planning on taking it, maybe not this first year. But I have to, like, the level of support that he's getting is good. It's working for him. We have supplemented it too at home with it's not called NCLU, but I call it NCLU because it's executive functioning support, just to kind of help him once a week stay on top of what he needs to do, just a little bit of extra support and coaching. So and I think that has helped him because he's used to that kind of thing, and it just reinforces what he needs to do to stay on top of his work and gives him new strategies.
Great, thank you. And Sarah.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, Emily started off the year with lots of support. She had academic support. And then she also had a reading class twice a week. And she came home, I don't know, maybe the first or second week, and she's like, Mom, I don't need this reading class anymore. And but I didn't want to jump to any conclusions or anything like that. And we waited a couple more weeks, and then it was her teacher that had reached. No, actually, I take that back. Emily, with all of the self-advocacy that she learned from Carroll, was talking to her guidance counselor, her teachers, her special ed teacher. So this was all happening at school that she was orchestrating. And then at one point, the phone call was made to me, and they said, she's really doing well. We just don't think she needs this class. And I support it because she really had made so much progress at the Carroll school. But what she is utilizing at Lexington High is the academic support that she has a couple times a week that she utilizes. The school also has an 8:30 start, which allows students to meet with teachers before the start of school. So there has been a couple of times where she's met up with a couple of her teachers to meet with them before school starts, and that's been really helpful. They also, Lexington High has a flex block that they call it. I think in some districts they call it Win What I Need. And so this is a class that students have to sign up for, like attendance is taken. And so it's an opportunity for students to sign up with the teacher or subject area that they're struggling in, or just want some more support, or just want a place to review for an upcoming test, or work on homework. And so that's been really helpful too, as well for her. So then that's just for the general ed, that's for everybody. But that happens twice a week as well.
Wow,
so
thank you very much, Sarah.
Really supported. It's been a really great transition for her.
What I really enjoyed hearing from all of you is basically that, number one, they're all embracing the support that's offered, and that the communication on, is this too much? Are we ready to move into a different space? Do I need more? That your young adults have taken that on themselves and understand again who they are, and are able to advocate for what's best, or take advantage of situations because they know what support is like and how that can benefit you. So I do think that that's terrific. And I appreciate that the public school reached out and said, she doesn't necessarily need this anymore. Let's talk about it. So I think like all these kinds of conversations are important to kind of tuck away, to think about, you can get the support in any kind of a school. You just have to make sure you ask the questions and knowing what they should expect too from you as a family. Like you're going to expect them to deliver and communicate. So I think that that's really terrific. So one of the things that has come up now a couple of times about the language waiver and whether you're accessing that or whether you're taking a foreign language. So I'm not sure if I got the pulse on everyone, because I know that Julia's in Latin and I know that Eden is in Spanish and Rohan is going to be taking a foreign language. And now I can't remember if Carrie, your son, Colleen, or what is the language, foreign language situation with each of the students that I don't remember, and I apologize if it was spoken.
Miles qualified for a language waiver. I forget if Proctor, I think they actually might suggest that they even if with a language waiver, that they try the language. I can't exactly remember if it was but he had one, and he's in his second year of Spanish, and he's doing, actually he really enjoys it and it's doing great. It's very how should I say this, like nuanced. So like and I know for sure if what you started in, like if you started in Spanish 1 and you weren't ready to move on, they would just let you do Spanish 1 again. So I think they actually do require language now that I'm thinking about it, but they kind of individualize it if your child for whatever reason is struggling. But Miles was able to handle it, enjoyed it, and is on to second level. There they also have a couple, because one thing that's unique to Proctor is these off-campus experiences, and they have a couple of programs, one in Costa Rica and one in Spain, that if you attend one of those and it's just for one of the 3 trimesters, you get a whole year of language credit by just going to that one off-campus experience, which is kind of a nice way to get that as well.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sorry, my phone went off and that should not have happened. So would anyone else, Emily, did you mention about the foreign language?
I don't think I did.
I mean, Sarah, about Emily.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
that's okay. That's fine. She takes Italian and is loving it. I have to be honest with you. I was so nervous. I really thought taking a language was going to be very challenging for her. But she's proving me wrong, and she's enjoying it. So we never considered the language waiver. It never came up in IEP conversations, but I was very nervous about her taking it, and it is only Italian 1, but she's enjoying it and doing well. So
that's great. That is great. Colleen, is Jack taking is he accessing a language waiver?
So sure, yeah, he was able to get a language waiver through his neuropsych doctor, and then we did talk to the folks over at Carroll, and they encouraged us for Jack to take a language. They said that students that came from Carroll, they did very well with a language. So we gave him the option, and they sat down with him and said, if you don't take a language, these are some other options you can take. He was looking into, they do have an option of sign language, which is recognized as a language now in most colleges. But he decided to take Spanish, and he's in Spanish 1, and he is loving it. And, the teachers, I have to say, because of his accommodations and because of his learning profile at the Winchington School, he does, he is able to be recognized for that and, take advantage of some situations with the language that, obviously for a dyslexic child, it's not easy. It's more phonologically based rather than visually based. So, but he's doing it and he's proud of himself, and his teachers are very proud that he went forth and did it. So I am too, actually.
That's really wonderful. So this is really incredible, because I have to say, accessing the language waiver is definitely a personal decision in it. And I think you have to do what's right for your child. But I will say, schools will often encourage or offer different options to give it a try for the best possibility of success. And if it doesn't work out, that's when you want to have that candid conversation with the school on what if this might not be the best space for my child. But I think what I'm hearing is that conversation happened and you felt comfortable having your child take that risk. And I think that risk wasn't much of a risk because they're all doing unbelievably well. And we hear that over and over again in our department, by the way, when we visit schools and that question comes up, more often than not, the school will say, well, your students, Carroll students, actually do exceptionally well. So, but don't feel that you have to go in a certain lane. I think the key here is it can be a discussion and you can figure out what's going to work. That's really terrific. It really is great. What was I going to ask now? So many great questions. So what do I want to ask? It was something I have on my list here from someone from before. Was really, and you somewhat answered this in many ways, but I'm going to have each of you, if you don't mind, offer how you felt about your child being prepared when they left Carroll to take on high school. And I know when you were moving into this space of high school with your child, you were uncertain of what they were going to bring to the table, not your child, the school, right? But how prepared did you feel your child was leaving Carroll to take on this new kind of adventure in their life? So you can, whoever would like to start. I know it's a thought-provoking question.
I'll go quickly, and I'll probably more talk to the boarding aspect of it because I want to.
Sure.
I
Yes.
just want to quickly make a plug because I know there's not a lot of other boarders. And actually,
No, you
Charlene
are
was
the person representing boarding schools. You
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Charlene was really helpful. So we never envisioned our son boarding. You know, the school was an excellent fit, and my husband and I could see that, but we were both very hesitant to have him leave. And it was a really hard personal decision, not for our son, but for us. And I remember Charlene saying, so we were toying with maybe he would go to a day school and then we would apply him out after 10th grade, 9th grade, if he was really still interested in boarding. And she said, no. She said, my advice to you would be to send him to boarding school. And if it's not a great fit, then you could always bring him back and consider day alternatives closer to you. So that advice was really spot on. And, you know, I will say that, you know, in all these different aspects, you know, he was prepared. I will say a couple of things. So like there are not tons, but there are a few Carroll kids at Proctor that he started with in his grade, but also in the other grades. I think that was a huge help for him, like easing in the boarding transition to have some kind of key faces, friends that were familiar. And I think just, yeah, you know, the school is aware they're getting all these new students who are away from home for their first time. And, you know, they have a lot of different supports in place. They have, you know, if qualifying the learning skills, but they all have advisors, and the dorm parents are excellent. They have dorm leaders. They all do sports. It's a very structured schedule. So there's not a lot of free time. They have classes on Saturday because they have half days on Wednesdays for sports. So his real free time is like Saturday after sports, basically till Sunday night study hall. So, you know, I think there was just a lot that Carroll prepared him for, and a lot that the school offers to get them kind of comfortable with themselves. And it really has been just such a smooth transition. But even if it wasn't, I know that there were enough supports in there. And a lot of these schools, I'm sure, have very similar things. I mean, I know Carroll has done just such a good job of recommending places where they know their students will succeed.
Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else want to share on their child's preparation for high school, Colleen, and then Kristen, and we can just go down the line.
Sure. So for Jack, I often laugh because I call it, you know, the Carroll's, you know, book of knowledge, but he calls it like his Carroll toolbox that he took away with him after leaving Carroll. You know, and I remember we worked with Kate Collins last year quite a bit, and she told us, you know, at the end of the year, he's going to walk away with a list of, you know, things that, you know, he will know that he will need. And she gave us that list, and he still goes by that list till this day of whether it be transitional words or how to study for a test. It's amazing what he still uses from Carroll. And I thank God for that every day, because he still goes by that as his little toolbox. And I think, he'll always carry a piece of Carroll along with him, whether it be through high school or college, because they, set the foundation now, and he can just take off with that. So, listen to the advisors at Carroll, trust the process. Francie, I know you're working with the upper school parents now. Listen to her and let her guide you, because they know your child academically better than anybody right now. And by the end of the year, you would be surprised, from this point now, we're getting into Thanksgiving, till the end of the year, how much more your child's going to gain from being at the Carroll School. And that information and that knowledge that they gain, they're going to take with them. So we've been very blessed to see that Jack took advantage of all his tools, and he's still using them as he goes on at the Winchington School.
Thanks, Colleen. Thank you very much. Kristen, how did Julia feel heading into high school?
Similar to Colleen, she really relied super heavily on the toolbox that Carroll set her up with. It is invaluable, I have to say. And it gave her, it was such a nurturing environment. It gave her the confidence to really feel like she could launch on her own and be successful as a learner wherever she landed. I will say she always gets called out for exceptional note-taking skills. When I meet with all of her teachers during parent-teacher conferences, so the study skills that Carroll taught her, my boys went to our public schools, and they don't have the same study skills. She knows how to study. She knows how she needs to learn because of Carroll. So that prepared her extremely well. The self-advocacy that Carroll taught her, I can't speak of highly enough. It has really allowed her to be successful, feel confident to speak up in the classroom or with her, advisors during academic support, or her teachers after school to get what she needs. I will also say that accessing online at Carroll, all of her, reading materials and school books, all the automated learning that happened at Carroll, SJP utilizes that same type of computer learning. So everything was on the computer for her, and she was used to that. And so she continued to use her Learning Ally and different things like that once she got to high school. Where I will say, I think that the toughest transition for her was to high school, because we all focused so much, meaning all as a family, to support her on the language side of things. And that was where our priority was. Math ended up being just a little bit of more of a struggle for her than we had anticipated. So she repeated Algebra 1 as a freshman. Many freshmen were taking Algebra 2 at SJP. She chose to do Algebra 1 just to get more of a solid basis, and then went on to do Algebra 2 and Geometry as a double math as a sophomore. So then she could take pre-calc as a junior to get to AP Calc, because she wanted to get to the AP Calc realm once she was a senior, to set her up for a high tier, competitive college. So that was kind of the only small thing, but it was, she was able to do, she was in honors, so she was prepared. It was just, we as a family kind of maybe focused too much more on the language than the math.
Thanks, Kristen. And Robin.
Yeah, so Eden was prepared and has been, I would say, and all of because of Carroll, no question. She is organized, and on her, she's always sort of been, Carroll taught us to, leave your kids alone and they will get to it. And we were always like, really? And she does do that, and she has, and it's been amazing. She puts a lot of pressure on herself academically. And that's always sort of hard for us to see because she does so well. And so as each grade progresses at Lawrence Academy, it gets harder. I guess also high schools each year gets a little bit harder. So she is doing really well, but just puts a lot of pressure on herself. But she totally has the tools to advocate and to keep moving and to get through. She's in finals this week, so she's obviously, ready to come home and just call it a day. But there's no question that she was ready. She was definitely ready. We were more worried about, this is a mainstream high school that she's in, and she really wanted that. And so we were more worried about how is this going to be for her. And it's been a great community. She loves it. It's the perfect size for her. And like I said, the supports are there when she needs it. And they're there when she says she doesn't need it, but they see that she does. They're there, which is what we love.
Thank you. Shauna.
I think the question was, did you feel
As to how prepared
was he prepared?
was your child after Carroll for high school?
And I didn't know, like going into it, I feel like you don't know, but he actually, I think part of the process of last year helped him prepare. I think just going through applications, going through essays, writing, like the reflection that's needed and kind of setting yourself up to be ready. I think that all helped him to be ready. I mean, he would have said he was ready, and I was, just trusted him, and he seemed, and he is holding himself up to like a higher standard that he just does on his own. So, and I attribute that to Carroll.
Great, thank you. And Sarah?
I can probably echo everything that's already been said. Everything from the self-advocacy. Emily is a very reserved young lady, and like I mentioned earlier, she self-advocated. She navigated through a situation that she wanted to address and fix, and she did lovely with that. She's advocated when she's wanted to meet with a teacher beyond classroom time. She's definitely using her Carroll toolbox. I know she had us out at Barnes and Noble to purchase one of the novels that they're reading in our English class so that she can write through it and take notes right in it in the book. So she's definitely doing everything that she learned from Carroll, which has been really helpful and great to see. And something that Robin had said too is that was big for us when she transitioned from our public school into Carroll. She would always say, Mom and Dad, I'm not supposed to ask for your help, and we're not going to help you. And that was hard at first for us as parents, not to get in there and help her, but we managed to learn how to do that. And since she has started high school, we haven't had to get in there. It's almost like she's now doing everything on her own, and she's doing a great job. So I think, to echo, I forgot who said this, we as parents were more nervous for her to return to the public school. But like I said, she's doing really well, and we're really happy with the supports that she's getting.
Oh, thank you. One of the things that I've heard a couple of things. I heard toolbox. Well, and I'm also going to tell you, I just got a little note on my computer that it's supposedly going to restart. So if I should disappear, I'm going to I'm going to assume that one of my these wonderful people here will take over. I'm just going to put that out there. A little chuckle, something always has to happen. But one of the things I was hearing is that several things. One is a toolbox. I remember from years past, it's incredible that you're all talking about this toolbox, and each one of you kind of brought it up in a certain way. And I recall a parent some years back saying, what's the toolbox? Where do I get this? What does my child have something? It's really the collection of the different strategies that all of your children have tucked away and remember and are implementing in high school, or their actual physical things like their graphic organizer, right? And it could be something physical, but oftentimes it's all the things that these teachers are saying over and over, which, you know, currently the families that are in the audience listening are thinking, my child's like, why are we writing that again? And it's the repetition, but that repetition of these tools and these strategies is what they're going to take with them to high school and actually go back and utilize. The other, what was the other point that I was thinking that was fascinating? It was something to do with the toolbox, but essentially, someone mentioned the note taking and how their child's a great note taker. I think it was Kristen. And for anyone listening, that history class, when you learn split page notes, your child might not love it at the moment, but they will. I wish I had split page note taking when I was in 7th or 8th grade, because these kids are going to go off to high school and college and know how to pull the information out of text and write papers. And although it might not seem like it's all coming together yet, what you're saying is it comes together. So it is wonderful to hear this. And so thank you for sharing that. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and I certainly don't want like 15 minutes. I don't want to, this has all been so glorious, but one of the things that comes up at times is everything sounds so great. Were there any pitfalls, or was there any like difficulty? I know, Kristen, you spoke of like the little bump in the road with math, where you maybe weren't expecting that to be so difficult for Julia, and you don't have to have something, but if there is anything that you feel like, wow, we weren't anticipating this, but we managed it, that might be helpful to share, because we all know these journeys don't go like this, right? And they don't always go like this. They kind of go like this, right? So if there's anything that someone could offer that can also be helpful to a family to say, okay, something we experienced, but you know what? It worked out okay. That might be nice to share as well. Robin?
Yeah, so when we were talking about languages earlier, and I said that Eden has the waiver and she's taking Spanish. She didn't take it last year as a freshman. She gave herself a year to sort of acclimate into the school and all of that. But she really is struggling with Spanish. And one of the things that I wanted to say earlier is that she's right now making a decision. She's going to do it for the whole year. She's making the decision to do it pass fail. She has a B in Spanish, but it's very hard for her, and she's stressed about going below a B. We think that's fabulous. We think it's amazing. It's the tests that are really hard for her, but it's the daily work and all of that she's doing, and she's fine and she gets it. It's the tests that are really hard for her, even though she gets the extended time. So we're saying, take it pass fail. And she keeps saying, but college. And so we're saying, you know what, you have a great story. You have severe dyslexia, you have a waiver, and you on your own have made the decision. This came from you to take this Spanish class. It's okay to take it pass fail, and to talk about how you wanted to do it. And you should be really proud of what you're getting in this class. So she hasn't made that decision yet as to take it pass fail, but she just took her exam the other day, her final. Her teacher has been all over helping her navigate through this and really working with her and really trying to, understanding that Eden, language is tough for Eden, given her dyslexia. So I will say that it hasn't been perfect in Eden's mind. We're really happy with whatever she chooses to do, including taking a different kind of class if she wanted to drop Spanish altogether, and we're leaving it up to her. But I would say that, there will be challenges and struggles, throughout your high school career. Even if your kid doesn't have a language-based challenge, they're going to have those struggles throughout high school. But I will say that you will know when you and your child go and find that school, that it's the right school. And we feel so confident in the support that Eden is getting at Lawrence Academy, very similar to the support and the warmth that she got from Carroll School. And at Lawrence, people know Eden just like they knew her at Carroll. And to us, that's really incredible.
Thank you for sharing that story.
We have a small high school here, and there's no way she'd be known in this high school here, in our public high school. So
thank you. Anyone else want to share like a little bump? Yes, Kristen.
Thanks. Similar to Robin, just with Julia, the warmth that she got from Carroll, it continues to be the warmth she gets at SJP. It's an extremely nurturing place. I just want to tell everyone that we had a bump in the road where I was talking earlier about empowering, because we made the decision of where Julia was going to go to middle school, which she's so grateful for now and so thankful for, but it was very hard for her in 5th grade to accept leaving our friends from the local public school and go to Carroll. Now she's eternally grateful for it, and it transformed her life. But because of that, we empowered her with the decision of going to high school and giving her a lot of input of where she wanted to go. And we listened to her and empowered her with that. And she made a decision that ended up being the wrong decision and started at one school that my husband and I had said to her, well, we really don't think that that's the right fit for you, but if you feel that strongly about it, we'll give it a shot. And 3 days in, we pivoted. I came home from work and found Julia in a fetal position on the floor, having a panic attack, and saying, that she made the wrong decision, and she wished she had listened to our advice better and made a better decision. And lucky for us, I pulled her up off the floor and I said, we're gonna get through this. You were so strong to tell us about this, and we're gonna work through it. And the next day we were over at SJP and they had a spot for her, and she started and they embraced her, and she's been thriving and launching a huge trajectory of success since she's been there. She's president of the National Honor Society. She's 2nd in her class. She's looking at some exceptional colleges, and although I do think she's a little bit scared to make the wrong decision for college. And we just keep telling her that you can always change it. Nothing is forever. And it took so much courage for her to realize that, but she knew, because of what she learned at Carroll, that it wasn't the right fit. She wasn't learning the way she needed to learn. And so luckily everything worked out beautifully. So, try not to put so much pressure on it, because if it ends up not being, hopefully you won't have to go through it and it will be the right fit. But I'm here to tell you, if it doesn't work out, you can always change and everything works out in the end.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Would anyone else like to, or have something they'd like to share in terms of just like maybe what hasn't been like completely smooth or everybody's feeling pretty good? I think we're feeling pretty good. That is good. Actually, I have a question for you, Jonna. What is Rohan's focus area, specialty at Minuteman?
He doesn't know yet. The first year they do
Exploration,
explore.
that's
They do
right.
an exploration, and so they have to narrow. There's 21 different career tracks there,
Incredible.
and so they have to narrow it down to 6 or 7, and then they do rotations through those 6 or 7 to figure out what fits the best.
Thank you. So a question has come up that's similar to what I think Kristen was talking about, but I think most of you could actually add on to this, which is a parent is curious that their student is currently uneasy and a little anxious about choosing the right school and how to sort through the priorities. And I know, Carrie, you talked about like day, boarding, and you had a long list. And, I know, Colleen, you looked at a bunch of different, you all looked at different schools, and Sarah, you and Jonna looked at the public, the private. And so in terms of like, I think that students can be a little anxious about I don't know how to figure out what one is going to be the right. Is there like I don't even want to say there's like a one answer tip. Something we say is those revisit days, if you're doing the route of the public, is huge, but is there something you can offer that can just a little piece of advice? Again, I could stay here all night, but I know everybody else might have to leave at some point. So anyone who would like to offer.
I would say in the end, apply to the schools that you know that those are the schools that whichever one your child decides to go to will work. And we felt like in the end, we did look at a bunch of schools, well, a bunch. We looked at like 4 and we knew, and many of them were boarding, or all of them were boarding. We didn't want her to go to boarding, but we knew she needed some help. And the day schools here didn't feel right for us for Eden to go to the day schools that are around where we live, because they made it clear we don't really have that kind of help. And we wanted her to be in a place where she wouldn't feel like she was left alone on an island, and be able to go to, a mainstream high school, which is what she really wanted. So we ended up applying to 2 schools, and both of those schools, and she got in to both for 10th grade, and both of those schools would have worked for her. We knew that. One of them was further away, and that would have meant boarding immediately, and we weren't ready for that. She wasn't ready for that. So, but if she had picked the other school, it would have been great for her as well. We really believed that in the end. We narrowed it down. You don't have to apply to all 4, or whatever, all the schools you're looking at, wherever your child decides to go. If you know in your heart of hearts that ultimately they're going to be great at any of those schools, then should take the pressure off, and, let your child lead that decision making in the end.
Anyone else have a Colleen, any thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
so we had looked at several schools as well. We were used to the commute to Carroll. My husband would drive 2 hours in the morning, and I would drive the 2 hours in the afternoon to get Jack back and forth. And I'd, still be doing it if I had to. But so we had looked and thought, shall he board? Should we take the ride if we have to? We were so used to driving him. We figured we'd keep doing it if we had to go elsewhere. It just so happened that the Winchington school is 20 minutes from our house, so it worked out well for us. But when Jack was looking, at first he thought sports. He's a big golfer, so maybe I should look at a school that has a good golf program. So we looked at a couple parochial schools that had great golf programs. But once he got there, he realized, maybe this just wasn't the right fit for me. Again, they know themselves better than anybody. So when he happened to go to the Winchington school, they do have a golf program there, but he saw it more for the academics. And he said, this I feel just like I'm at Carroll right now. He said, everything is jiving in the direction that it should. So that's when, again, we let him take the lead, and he told us, this is the place I want to be after looking at several schools. So listen to your children, and let them somewhat take the reins there, and know themselves, and rely on them to walk you through the process as you go along with them. And I think that can be very helpful.
Anyone else have any tips on helping a student get through their space? Yes, Carrie.
Yeah, just a couple things. So Miles was actually able to, there's a couple Proctor alumni who actually work at Carroll. So Miles was able to speak with some teachers and individuals at Carroll who were close to Proctor to kind of get their sense on their experience there, which I think was very valuable to him and something that stuck with him. Also, I would just say, try to get as many touches with the school as possible. Like, my son does play a lot of sports, so we tried to go to sporting events at the school just to get a feel of what you can from being there. Obviously all the revisit days and as many of the different activities they had ahead of time. But I know that he did spend a lot of time talking with people at Carroll about his decision, and that really did help. I think that's probably all I'd add versus other people.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything? One of the things I'll say is, I know that it was mentioned earlier about being in contact with people at schools that may have a Carroll person that will be willing to talk. What we would suggest, and it's really helpful, is most of the schools that are independent, anyway, it's hard with the public schools because we have 8 kids that will be matriculating from Carroll from so many different districts, right? So we don't know everything about all the districts. But the students that go to a lot of the schools, if you call the admissions office, they will often say, we have a Carroll family that would love to talk to you. So the schools, so my advice, to offer out is that a lot of times the schools will have a student or family from Carroll who's given permission. They've already signed to that they'd be willing also to talk with a family, which is really helpful. And I think before we kind of close out, I would love if each of you could, I get the impression each of your children is having a pretty great experience from just how you're all talking, and you all seem to be very happy. What I am interested in is if you could give some closing advice that maybe you wish you'd thought about, or something you want to share, or anything now that you're like in a new position, you're looking back at Carroll versus the families that are listening aren't on that side yet, and so now looking through this new lens, what advice or not even advice, it could be wisdom, tip, anything you want to share, kind of those last parting thoughts for the families. And for any of the families that I didn't get to a question, I will get an answer and perhaps email you back. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear from each of you. And just some parting words. Yes, Jana.
One thing I wanted to say this, because when folks were talking about the toolbox, I remember watching this exact Zoom last year and remembering that a parent said at the end of the year, before your child leaves Carroll, that last parent teacher conference is a perfect, teachers will tell you what they know to be in your students' toolbox, like what's worked well for them that year. And though it's just it's a parting gift, honestly. And I remember like, okay, that last parent teacher conference, I'm going to make sure I know exactly, and that Rohan knows exactly, kind of what's worked well for him this year.
I love that. Thank you. And thank you for reminding us all, and all the families have something to look forward to. Who else would like to offer? Yes, Carrie.
So, when Miles first started at Proctor, obviously he was boarding, and it was a little bit hard being away, like what's going on, like can I follow him and his schedule? So like I was like looking at the Proctor assignments, and I was like, do you have this in? Do you have this in? Do you have it, like for a day? And he was like, oh my God, Mom, if you need to just like let me manage this, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, okay. And that was like great advice, because he has managed it, perfectly since then. I mean, there's ups and downs, but he's got his learning skills advisor there, all these types of things, but don't be too all over them, because they do need their space to kind of thrive and grow, and it does all work. And I didn't mention this earlier, but like his first day was in honors math, and he's like, this is entirely too fast for me. And I was like, that I had no issue with, but he was making decisions pretty quickly with talking with us and advisors. And I think just letting them kind of go and not being too worried about that was probably the best advice that I'd say, as you go ahead.
Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate that. Who else would like to share? Oh, Sarah?
Sorry, I was on mute. For those families or those children that are on IEPs, I strongly encourage you to ask if one of the current teachers would be willing to join an IEP meeting. I thought that was really helpful in our situation. As we all have said, the teachers at Carroll know our children really well, their academic skills, and it was so helpful having somebody from Carroll at the table with us.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. All right, Robin, Kristen, and Colleen, I know you have these last words of wisdom you want to share. Okay, Kristen.
I was just going to say, similar to Jana, the information that you get at the end of the school year from the parent-teacher conferences And we were lucky enough to have our head of school, Larry Brown, in our meeting as well, who's now retired. But, and just the information that we got there, we were able to hand all of that paperwork over to her high school, which was so invaluable to have that just as a baseline. But looking back, I would give anything to go back to the years at Carroll, and just not stress so much about how they were going to succeed or how they were going to transition into high school, because it all works out. They are really well set up to thrive in this next chapter of their lives. So my advice, I think, would be just to savor the moment, believe in your student, believe in the process, and enjoy the ride, because I get teary-eyed thinking that my last is she's off to college, and I am going to have an empty nest, and I would just give anything to go back and have enjoyed it and not stressed about it as much as I did. And just one last thing I forgot to mention, plug for SJP, is that even though it's parochial, we're not religious, and they embrace people of all faiths. And we look at the education of the religion more as kind of morality, history, rather than religion. And also the head of the Academic Enrichment Center is from Landmark. So they really do know Carroll profiles very, very well. And it's truly a family and a community, just like Carroll was.
Thank you, Kristen. Robin?
Yeah, I remember something really poignant that Steve Wilkins said to us. We would always say, why can't Carroll go through 12th grade? Why can't it go longer? He said, because the world isn't like Carroll. And we were like, yeah, that's why we needed to go to 12th grade. And he said his point was, what? We're going to get your child to the point where they're going to be able to operate in a world where they're going to have to navigate it on their own and advocate for themselves. And so we purposely are stopping at 9th grade, because we know that Carroll is this very wonderful, warm, nurturing place to get, and helps your kid during that very critical point in their lives, but then helps, to get through and navigate and learn the strategies, but then helps them to go beyond that. And that is true. And we see that in Eden when she's out and about. Every day we see pieces of Carroll coming out all the time. And so, like Kristen said, trust your gut, trust the process, trust folks at Carroll School, and more importantly, trust your child, because they really do know at this point sort of what feels right to them. They're old enough to make that decision, and it is okay if they do get it wrong. There's no such thing as wrong in that regard. It turned out to be different than they had thought, so it's okay to make a move if you need to. But I'd say that was what Steve said was really helpful in just sort of navigating the rest of the time.
Thank you, Robin. And Colleen?
Sure.
The last
So,
words of wisdom.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that, but I would, go along with what everybody else had said. Enjoy this process. Don't, let it hold you back from enjoying your last moments or last months at Carroll either. I know it can be stressful, but just, enjoy the ride that you're going on with your students. Walk away from these schools that you're looking at with, write down the pros and the cons as you go along, and you will find the right school for your student. You definitely will, and you'll know when you find it. And again, listen to the Carroll advisors, and listen to what they have to say about your child as you depart from the Carroll School. It is a sad day for all of us as we leave Carroll, but like I said earlier, we'll forever be part of the Carroll community, and because it was so important to all of us.
Well, I can't thank you all. There was a last question about what happens at Carroll Upper. I'm not sure. I think that was just a global question in terms of like it being the 9th grade. They're going through the same process. Colleen and Robin, they have a 9th grade year and you move on and you're essentially as equipped. For some, you feel more equipped because you weren't quite ready to make that move as an 8th grade student leaving from Carroll. But I just want to say thank you. My heart is full right now. I could just sit here and listen and talk all night. I feel like there were so many other points I wanted to bring up, but I know that an hour and a half is enough of everyone's time. But it is truly just so appreciated from our team, from Carroll, that we have these wonderful parents that have shared their incredible children with us. And now we get to hear how they're doing in high school. And we are so grateful. And I know that the families that are listening and the recording that is going to be delivered to the other families so that they can also hear how this journey has been for all of you is very helpful because you all are living it. You know, we are beside you and we love being beside you, but you've all lived it and you have these incredible children that you've shared with the world. And we are so grateful. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great evening.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.